Bartail has been one of the persons who's watched all the shows. I talk to him on a regular basis in the EverQuest Next IRC channel.
What we saw with, Kunark for EQ2, you did those 400 quests, you did all the content, and at the end of it, the world wasn't changed.
Yeah, I'm Phantom X. I do social media and write articles for EQ Nexus.
For the Fall of Bastion, there was a very definite, okay, this is where your story is going to fit into the world.
Listen, fluffy looking bear, thank you. Listen, I went and I killed a dragon, and then 2 drops of whiskey hit my face, and I willed this manly beard into cow was raising, yes!
Hello and welcome to EverCast episode number 40, which we have called Ready Check. For those that are new to the show, EverCast is an EverQuest Next and Landmark podcast, but we feel free to talk about other MMOs that compared to the MMO that we are most looking forward to, which is EverQuest Next. My name is Chanlin. With me are our other 2 co-hosts. I'll give them a second to introduce themselves.
Kyla's first.
Why is it always me first? Hi guys.
Ladies first.
Well, Tarina's not here, so I guess I'll go first. Hi guys, I'm Kai.
Hi, and I'm Flatus.
Yes, and Chewy isn't making it tonight. His last message that he sent to us was "Don't get old." Evidently, there was a fire at one of the apartments that his grandmother stays at, and he had to go to her rescue. Though whether she lives there or whether she works there, that wasn't really clear. But
She works there.
Okay. Well, and so anyway, he is off doing his own heroic deeds in the real world, and so it's the 3 of us.
No, you better stay around.
So yes, stick around. I mean, what it really sucks though is because he offers that look into EverQuest 2 rating, because none of us have any real experience with the EverQuest 2 rating. I have experience in more than one MMO of rating though. Like I rated a little bit in Vanguard, but I just realized that I kind of jumped into the topic without really introducing it.
Yeah. You play the old switcheroo, the old drop the hint in the middle of a sentence.
Well, so Massively recently did a 3-part series on their soapbox. Basically, it's their opinion pieces about why to get rid of rating. Rating is old. It's bad. It's unnecessary. Get rid of it. Just get rid of it. And I know the 3 of us were like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. And so I thought that we would, talk about rating experience, talk about the MMO experience, and why, in my point of view, rating is integral to that experience. But, maybe there's a gleam of truth in what the person was saying about why rating is not good and needs to be removed from MMOs. And most importantly, though, since we are talking about rating, and we're an EverQuest Next podcast, what type of rating, because we've done enough imagining, how does what we talk about tonight relate to rating in EverQuest Next?
Are you actually asking us a question, or are you just making us?
I'm giving a pause. Throw in your top. What are your thoughts on this? Before we start breaking it down, the 6 reasons that they give in the series, and I'm going to go ahead and link them in channel while you guys talk about what are your raid experiences like? What do you think?
Yeah, by the way, EQ Next will have raids.
Pardon?
EQ Next will have raids.
It's not going to have raids like we know, but it's going to have rating.
Have something.
It's gonna have these things.
See, I see Diggs has just written that EQ Next doesn't have rating. EQ has large group content, but isn't that what rating is?
Let's all get into a large giant group and kill a dragon. But it's not a raid, guys. It's not. Don't get those two things confused.
Right?
And that person over there, they are healing other people, but not a raid. That's just, they wandered around. They were like, oh, hey, all of my friends are over here killing this dragon. They look like they're about to die. Let me get some heals on them so that they don't. But I think that's one of the important things to ask is that, like, raiding in EverQuest 2 was instanced, right? And Warcraft, of course, all the the challenging content is all instant stuff. But in Vanguard, I can tell you that it wasn't instant stuff.
World bosses aren't instanced.
True.
And you can't solo those, so those are hard. Trust me, I've tried.
I understand what you're saying, but world bosses in Warcraft are the exception. They're not really the
rule. No, I know.
Wait,
they definitely require a raid group.
But so when the Warcraft uses the rating to deliver their story content, right? So like you go from the world in one type of sense, and there's always this big thing that's happening in the world that you need your friends together to accomplish. World bosses aren't like that. That's just like, the random, like, throw out something for people to engage with. But the instant content is also delivering part of the story, like what happened to Arthas when he was sitting on the Lich King's throne at the very end, right? We all saw that over and over and over again. So I would say the world bosses, yeah, it still requires a raid group, but is it is it raiding as we think about it, or is it raiding as the outside of the realm of what we're really talking about here? And that Diggs brings up the great point, though, because isn't it large? What is large group content? What is that whole raiding thing?
It's like we're not going to have tanks, healers, or DPS. We're not going to have roles. But that one guy, they're totally going to make sure you don't die. And that one guy, they're going to totally piss that other monster off for you. And those other people, they're going to kill that monster. Dude, that's still a tank, a DPS, and a healer. Just because it doesn't bear the name doesn't mean that's not what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They can call it Super Happy Fun Time for all I care. It's full raid.
Well, right. And I think it was the players that came up with the term raiding, right?
Yeah, because you're essentially, as a group, raiding that monster together.
Right. So
Jay Crail was playing WoW. I love it.
I think that's right. So EverQuest, the original EverQuest, I don't know enough about it to know if the raids in the original EverQuest were instanced or not. I know that in Vanguard, you still. They didn't have the whole story delivery content part of raiding, but it still required like an organized group and like healers per group and all that sort of thing.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, what is EverQuest Next going to consider that type of stuff? Well, what is it?
They have said that instanced content is in their toolbox. And that they will use that tool in their toolbox when they think that it delivers the experience that they're looking for. And I think that that's the important thing to look at raiding in general is that what is the experience that you're looking for when you log into the MMO and in that same regard, what do developers write the code? What do they build the game? What type of experience are they trying to build for you to experience? And, I can admit that as when I was raiding in groups like 3 or 4 years ago, that there was a disconnect. What I wanted to experience and what I actually experienced, there was a big chasm between the two, and they didn't really meet. And I think that all across the industry, MMO raid experiences have been better. They've come up with better tools to deliver that experience to you so that you enjoy it, so that you get to see what it is that you've been missing out on.
Well, I think
I was gonna point out what Diggs was saying, but go ahead. If you're gonna play off Tamlin, I'll play off chat. So go ahead.
All I was saying was that this particular article, like, basically says that rating doesn't do anything for a game, and that MMOs don't have to have rating in it, and that you can just completely take out rating, and it's still going to be a good game, and that rating takes away the developers from other better content for the majority of players, and they're catering to the minority by building grades. And then it's not social.
Right. So that is the first point that they bring up in part one, is that it's too expensive in terms of resources, right? That building the raid is too expensive, and it takes away from the developers' time to be able to work on other content.
I was going to point out, Diggs is saying that they would use that instance content for story finales, and if those story finales require a large group to go kill a certain specific boss, I would consider that a raid. Now, here's the question: like, if we believe these articles and that the small percentage of the community looks at that content, then it means that a small fraction of the community is only going to see that story finale. Bueno or no bueno? Unless you expect people to like queue up or randomly group up to go run into a raid with each other to go see how the story ends.
I think that it's vital that as many players get to see that as possible, especially if you're putting like some of that key story element in an instant content that for raiding, that you've got to make it accessible, and you have to find ways to make it more accessible without undercutting some of the other social structures that are in place in an MMO, like the community. Like, I think that LFR might have been too much going one way, but I think flex rating and these are both WoW technologies, right? Like, putting yourself in a queue to queue for LFR so that the system automatically puts you in a pre-made group and off you go. I think that's a little bit too far, because all of the social interaction and connections that you need to be in a team to see content in a challenging environment, all of that is essentially removed. Like, they have to make it as simple as possible for you to be able to experience it. And I think that was a step too far in getting as many people to see the content as possible, because that's the objective. But I think that flex rating is a step in the right direction, because no longer do you have to have like hey, I have 12 people on my friends list and they all want to go raiding with me, but we're a 10-man raid group, so 2 of my friends have to sit out. It's like that. As soon as you can start removing those obstacles, that's you can, as a raid leaders, be like, the more the merrier. We can take up to 5 or 6 more people. Let's go.
So the only objection that I have to that particular statement is that I think LFR is a really good tool that was implemented poorly. And the reason why LFR to me is better as opposed to Flex, and don't get me wrong, I like Flex, is that in Flex, you still have a raid leader that still dictates who gets to go and who doesn't get to go, and what the gear score is they have to be to get into the raid, where LFR, the game dictates that to you. So you don't have an asshole telling you what you can and can't do. You have a game telling you what you can and can't do. And I think that's removes the negative social aspect that was brought up about rating in the article.
Yeah. Well, let me find out where that point was made.
Mine was part 3.
Yours is in part 3?
Yep.
Yeah, I was going off the that it was designed for a tiny portion of people playing the game, so and to play off what Mitsuna is saying, that he's like, I love raids, and I think they've become a tool to get large number of players to play together because nothing else in game incentivizes them to do so anymore. In my honest opinion, I think EQN means to provide many more incentives to their game for players to want them to join together to play like rally calls, i.e. as opposed to using traditional raid instance for that. Yes, baby! doesn't mean that just because you have a rallying call, that's the overarching quest, and it doesn't mean I have to group up with anybody. It just means that we're all working towards that one goal. I could still do it solo. I can help solo, I would assume. Like I can go down into a mine and collect rocks and deliver rocks so they can help build up the castle or build the town and stuff like that. I mean, it's just... I'm just being realistic, like... You know, what makes it... What forces me to group with people in that instance? You know, it's either way, it's being forced on me, regardless if it's an overarching quest like the rallying call or if it's a raid. At least with the raid, it's more of I'm getting together with my friends to go do this thing. That's less forcing. I don't have to do it, but I could also do PvP if I wanted to with my friends and still do that, and that's a large group. It depends on your spice, but at the end of the day, if you want social interaction, you got to start looking at the ways you can do things and make that more open. Maybe rating's not the problem. Maybe the problem is how you deliver content. And trying to make it so that more people are pushed into social interaction versus I want to play this solo.
Right, and that was how I phrased the introduction to the whole not argument, but discussion, conversation. Is that like when you log into the game and you're playing an MMORPG, what type of experience are you expecting to have? And for me personally, like I love. I want to be able to do heroic things. Like I want to be like a figure that's larger than life to a certain extent and, deliver like massive fireballs and stuff like that. And, be basically my adrenaline junkie self, not having to put my body at risk by, doing backflips and stuff like that. Because really when you're in a very tense situation and raiding and stuff like that, they're laughing at me, right?
No. It's more of because she's looking at like, who is this person you're describing?
Adrenaline junkie? What?
Yeah, beating my friends up with foam swords and then moving on to like non-padded wooden sticks to beat on each other with. That's a bit of an adrenaline thrill. But
Okay.
Back on a point here is that I want to feel like I've done something heroic and challenging when I log in, and I can't. And I want it to be social. Like I want to be grouped with my friends while I do it, right? Because otherwise, I could play a single player game and almost get the same feeling to it. And at a certain point, though, I want it to be bigger than just a 5-man team.
I'm sorry. Talon, my keyboard is really clicky loud. I would like to apologize, but it's pretty.
It is really pretty.
Yeah.
It's all rainbowed out and stuff.
I was gonna say, I think it was Craigla Kitty that was like, oh my god, I want that.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. Like, somebody was saying like have a different loot table if I go solo, but I don't like that. What was if I put the same amount of effort?
It's not MMO anymore if you're going solo.
And I think that's entirely the wrong approach because when I go in and do raids and stuff like that, it's never the loot that's incentivized for me. But when I know that better gear is available for different modes of content, then it becomes incentivized because it's like I could do it this way and I can get a lesser quality, whatever. But if I do it this other way, it's better. I'm like, well, why don't we do it the better way? Because obviously, more risk, better reward, right? That's the way that works. But even if they like when EverQuest Next, they're not going to have the same sort of gear progression, right? In that what we're accustomed to, where a raid tier of gear has better stats, and so you need certain stats on your gear to be able to overcome the challenge of the next raid.
Yeah. In that instance, I guess you would be looking at like how Rift did their rifts handle their rifts, where everybody was put into a group, and it wasn't based on they grouped you automatically, but then it was just based on your effort, how much effort you put into the group content.
Yeah, I thought that was a bad system too.
Yeah, it wasn't great. and what you got out of it didn't really matter either. You just got I got more rocks. I did it solo. I got less rocks, but this time I got more rocks.
Yeah,
I got 5 rocks.
Until after doing it for 2 or 3 weeks, and your bags are just over freaking flowing with all these rocks that you've collected from all of these rifts that you've gone and experienced, and you're just like, enough.
Yeah, and then you go like, what can I spend these rocks on? Oh, I can get a ghost squirrel. That's a thing. Look at my ghost squirrel. 5,000 rocks. See, vertical power won't grow past your 5. At the end, all right. At least with tier, I'm gonna go through part 1 real quick. Well, the first thing I guess we should is the pick on. It's too expensive in terms of resources. Now, they're talking about like content, like how much money they spend on the rating. Well, someone like Blizzard, who is as big as they are, they have a team of players, like a group that works on raids. Same for Square Enix. They have a team that works on the raiding part of it. So the question is, for someone like SOE, who's gonna do large grouped content, do they have a specific small team that works on that content, or is it just written into the story or written into the overarching rallying call?
I'm almost sure that they've got they've got the story team, right? So they're putting all these different rallying calls in the game and how they're going to progress from one rally call into the next as the world develops while we play it. And so again, yeah, it might be an expensive. It might be an expensive thing to do, but as a player, I don't think that MMOs. What else would they be spending those resources on? Because if it's content that I'm not asking for, then really does it matter to me? It's like, okay, WoW can't have another raid tier because they put battle pets in the game. It's like, oh, sorry, we can't play Pokemon in an MMO, because I'm sorry, they waited a year from one raid to the next expansion, and if they could been like, okay, no battle pets, no Pokemon, but you get another raid before the next expansion, I'd been like, sold, sign me up.
Yep, I would have been sold too. It's like, wait a minute. But then there's that one person, I love a 25 Pikachu and I want 2 of them. I want 2 Pikachus.
Wrong game, buddy.
Yeah. If you want that, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire just came out. You might want to go pick those up.
The thing is like, I say that and I say it really dismissively and kind of condescendingly, but I am the achievement chaser. I have put time into my battle pets because I want the achievement points that come with it. And I can tell you, nothing about it is exciting. Nothing about it causes any sort of tense battle moments, and all of it is soloable. All of it, and unless you want to PvP with other people, but there's no group content. So all of that tells me that this is a game for non-heroic seeking single player game players, and that's not the MMO experience that I'm looking for. And when I say that, I feel that I represent a large population of the MMO players.
Do you know what battle pets are perfect for?
Wasting time sitting in queue.
Long, boring DPS queue of
and that's why I said that, like, I think that the LFR queues were the wrong way to do things, because now all of a sudden you turned an MMO experience into a what do they call it? A lobby-based system, right? So you sit around in the lobby and you play the little mini side game waiting for your queue to pop, and then you're like, oh, now it's my turn to play the game. And I think that the Flex delivered a better experience because it allows the people that are in charge of organizing raids, the people that like building teams and making teamwork, we can still do our job and be like, okay, you show up at this time with this DPS and off we go.
But they don't like to take me on raids. LFR are the only people that will raid me.
Not true.
I've been kicked out of raids before.
By him?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Me?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Because he's my husband, he was the one that had to deliver the news. Dude, we can't take your wife with you guys. I have. Dude, we can't take her wife. Her gear isn't good enough. And you know what? He still went on that raid. And then woke me up, oh my god, that gear piece that I wanted dropped.
Well, I guess that would bring us to
Nerd love, man, nerd love. Right there.
I guess that would bring us out.
You got room on your couch, buddy? She will never let me put that down.
She hasn't kicked you out of the house yet. I think you're okay.
And seriously, that's not the worst he's done, so yeah, we're good.
Well, what do you guys feel? How do you feel that, like, the percentage of people playing these raids is 10%? Do you think that's because of the content being too hard? Do you think that SOE needs to look at making the content more accessible for everybody?
More accessible.
Some people, it's just flat out more accessible. I agree. I think that raiding. I think a lot of it is fear. I think that the mindset for people is that they're afraid. They're afraid to get into raiding because you hear those horror stories, you hear about LFR, you hear about the way people get treated, and you're just like, I don't want to.
Our break video is the perfect example of bad raid leadership. And you're right; those groups do exist out there, and it is a reason to be like, nope, I don't want any part of that. Screw it. It's just not worth someone yelling at me like that.
I'll say this, and I'll tell you the story real quick why I quit. WoW initially. I'm back now. That's why I quit WoW initially. I was back during Thunder King, and some of my guild was like, "Let's go do the LFR version." I was like, "Okay, I'll tank." So and knowing all true and well that tanks got a hell of a beating in LFR, but I knew the fights and I knew what I was doing. New tank hopped in, and I was the nice guy who was like, I will tell you just, this is when you pull off, this is the fight, it's pretty simple. Most of those fights were simple. They weren't crazy in the Throne of Thunder. Nothing too out of the, like, WoW's crazy box. No mechanic was too weird for me. And so I explained it to him, he kind of grasped the concept, and we were at Thunder King, and Thunder King was a little sketchy, you could wipe easily. And I told him what to do, but the raid was taking, like, the mass majority of DPS and healers were not happy that I was taking my time explaining the fight to him. And I stood up for him, saying, listen, I'm just telling him how to do it, and we'll get through this. And they went to go vote kick him, and then I got pissed off at them, and I stood up for him. It was like, how dare you? It's like, why? It's like, well, that's what I get. And a chunk of the raid said, good guy, get on your soapbox, and you deserve a reward from Blizzard because we think that you standing up to a massive group of people and telling them off, saying that that's not right, is a good way to go. And the other half did not agree with that, and I got vote kicked out. And at that time, I was like, well, done. Screw this, screw the community, because I was shunned, and it was just it left such a bad taste in my mouth that why would I want to go back and play?
And then Warlords dropped.
Yeah, then listen.
Let's stay on the raid topic.
Let's stay on the raid talk. But I mean, yeah, I mean they made, like, let's look at that. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, community is everything, right? You want people. I think that's one thing we can do is incentivize being good to people. Like, if you give somebody the ability to say, like, hey, you did a good job, or like in Final Fantasy, it's a perfect example. Final Fantasy is a little thing pops up, says, hey, listen, this such and such person has never done this before. Just heads up. You can't kick them out. Even better, you can't kick that person out, because if you kick you know it don't work well for you in the end.
Everybody else will just drop out, and they'll be sitting in the instance alone.
And WoW, yes. In Final Fantasy, no. You actually if you help that person out, you get it in, and like it kind of makes you, like, you have the ability to vote and say, well, this person is very helpful, so you get, like, here's a little up thing, and you get achievements for it, and you get, like, special things for it, like titles and stuff like that. So it kind of incentivizes you to like be helpful, and then also now WoW's added it. It was like these specialized groups that you can join, and in Final Fantasy they had it too, where you can just like learning groups. You can learn the raids. Like they had groups people set up where you can just learn the raids, where they wouldn't hurt you, and it wouldn't be like a bad thing either. So now I see WoW's kind of doing that in the specialized little group tab. So that I'm looking at it and I think where they're going, which I think a lot of MMOs need to start going that direction, is let's incentivize helping each other.
I agree. And
so
I also think that's because you brought up accessibility earlier, and I think that early raids in MMOs, because it was so hard not so hard, but because it was so costly, because it took a lot of developer time, that was like there was one raid and it was meant for this many people, and that was it, and the accessibility became an issue, because maybe your computer could handle running the game out running around in the world, but when it came to running the game in a raid setting with 18, 20 other people in the raid group, all of a sudden now you couldn't raid, so you had to be like, I can play the game but I can't raid. And I think that that's one of the things that when you're developing those type of encounters that you have to keep in mind, is that we have to make it accessible for a broad range of computers, not just the high-end players. And then difficulty accessibilities. I think that having multiple ways to experiencing the difficulty allows people to pick and choose what difficulty they want to try and experience, what type of challenge that they want. And I think that that's a great thing. And Rift had scaling difficulty, right? More people showed up, harder boss.
Yep.
And they did it before WoW did their flex rating system.
Yeah. And I like that. Trust me, we did that the other day. We had the rare out in the middle. And
see, Guild Wars 2, I don't know if in Guild Wars 2, I only did one raid encounter that was an open world raid encounter in the world PvP battleground. So everybody is bumped up to max level. But I don't know if the boss necessarily got more complicated because of the amount of people. Like, I don't remember. I do remember, though, because Guild Wars 2 didn't have the Holy Trinity, that it was a holy clusterfuck. Because you were like, no one's going to heal me because there are no healers. So I have to I got to bounce and heal myself. And is it coming at me? Because with 30 other people running around it, because it was in a huge Zerg at the time, it was like you couldn't really tell if the boss was targeting you specifically. It was a whole lot of AoE that they were throwing on the ground. And so it was bouncing around left, right, and trying to keep yourself alive while doing a little bit of damage to it. And I don't know if that necessarily was a better experience. It was certainly a unique experience.
Well, you said huge Zerg.
That looks like a small Zerg.
It's adorable. In chat, Michael Fowley said, EQ Next large group content won't be fun for me unless barely anyone can complete it, and it takes huge effort. Where Diggs responds back, that makes sense since you're hardcore. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. See, I think, and I said this before, and I think I used the analogy that it's a balancing act. I think the best way to say that any MMO company out there right now needs to make sure that it's not just one thing. I think it's kind of like that guy who can spin a bunch of plates on sticks. That's kind of you want to make sure everything's going okay, because when you're paying attention to something else is going to falter. So you don't want to concentrate on one thing. So you have to make it so that someone like Diggs can still do the content, but someone like Michael Flatley still has the ability to do a harder version of that content. And I agree, if Michael Flatley wants to do content that's harder, then the question is it going to come from that large group content where everyone can just go in and do it, or is it going to come from the content that is what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Not the one instanced. The instance content where you can kind of tune it to where you want it. I mean, to me personally, if I had a guild and EQ Next, large group content will be fun out in the open world, but if I still would kind of want to do something that's in a raid setting inside, or a large group dungeon setting. To me, that would be fun.
I'm just going to point to Warcraft in that I thought that they did that kind of thing well, in that you had normal mode, and if you could defeat all the bosses on normal mode, then the raid leader could change it to heroic mode, and then you could go through it on heroic mode. And they did. Ulduar had a heroic boss, and Throne of Thunder had a heroic boss that you had to. It was only available on heroic mode, which means your raid group had to knock out all the bosses on heroic up to that guy before you got the chance to go at him. Or it was something similar to that. It might have just been like a normal boss. You had to defeat all the bosses on normal to be able to challenge him. But it was like there was levels of difficulty that you got to pick and choose. And I think that, again, what we're talking about, like scaling difficulties is I think one of the chief things that when you're making a modern MMO with today's players, you need that from the very casual gets in and is able to see the content, because if that's where you want your story being delivered from, you have to get them in there. Otherwise they're missing out on it. All the way up to the extremely hardcore that only like 5% of your player base actually get to down this boss and earn that title type stuff.
I agree with that. I mean, a lot of it. See, a lot of people are saying effort equals time or effort equals skill. Because running this to get 40 people in one piece of gear, no thanks. I agree with that.
Effort is not necessarily skill, because I can put a crap ton of effort into a particular class and still not be good at it. Effort equals time, not necessarily skill. Because man, I still suck at Death Knight.
Death Knight?
Still. Oh god, I'm awful at Death Knight. And everyone's like, that's such an easy class. Why can't you play it? And I was like, because I suck at melee DPS.
So I think that one of the things that the article about get rid of rating that wasn't brought up, that and they're talking about it in chat right now, is that it's repetitive. And I there's no argument from me there. I think that's one of the things that, how do you make it accessible and not challenging? Or not accessible and not repetitive. Like when you who has done LFR just once just to see it? Like just run through it and like, oh, I've seen it on LFR now. I've seen how the raid progresses and I'm done. I don't need to go in there anymore.
I guarantee there's been people that, like story people, that just want to see the story and just want to see like, okay, I did all this outside world stuff. Let me go do the LFR to see the inside the raid stuff so I can see how that ends and then continue the story outside. And I guarantee that's what they do. Are you raising your hand and say, yes, I did that?
So is that a good thing, right? Like the casual player gets into the instance, gets into the raid, whatever it is, and they get to see that toolbox delivery of the developers you wanted you to see. And then like, hey, this seems like it's going to get really repetitive. I don't want to do it anymore. There's no reason for you. I mean, did it justify the cost?
I think that iteration of LFR was not. I think it was, since it was first implemented, I don't think it was well thought out. Because it really wasn't.
I'm trying to...
but as from a, like, let's say a solo player or someone who just likes the story, yeah, that was good for them. I think that was a great way for them to kind of, like, especially like DPS. I'm going to go with DPS because they could kind of just, like, pew pew, pew, pew pew, and not really get hazed too much. If you were a tank or a healer, you got hella hazed in LFR, like, because there was more riding on you. But if you were DPS or like a mage or any rogue or anything like that, you can kind of just be like, as long as I'm doing damage, all that matters.
So all you have to do is stand in the back and be quiet and do your damage.
Yeah.
No one bothered you.
And not be a hunter.
Yeah,
If
I would have rolled in there with my mage and just was like, arcane bolt, yeah, just chugging arcane bolt to people, arcane missile. I would have been the dude just like clicking my mouse, and be like, pew 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 pew, next boss.
But don't, seriously, he's right though. Don't be a healer and don't be a tank.
I disagree. I think that healers have it a little bit easier because
until the fucking raid wipes. And then, like, the healers weren't doing enough healing.
Just don't be the bottom healer, then. but the same argument applies to DPS, right? The raid wipes. Who do they look at? Who's the low DPS? They're not doing enough. Get rid of them. Let's get someone else in here. And that's why meters and DPS parsers, that type of thing. That I think is a subject for another show, because I could do without them.
Final Fantasy doesn't have add-ons, and they don't have them in there, so.
Yeah, I don't know if Van.
I was gonna say it just, you don't concentrate on what's going on over here in my damage meter. You're concentrating on the fight and what the group does versus everyone else is, like, how am I doing compared to everyone else.
Yeah, and like Vanguard didn't have DPS meters. They might have had them, but I just wasn't aware of them because that's not the type of raider I was at that point in time. But I know that when it came down to running dungeons, they didn't have no instances in Vanguard, so you're just running around in your group in the dungeons. But I would tell people over and over, if you've got 2 tanks that want to go with you, do it. It doesn't matter. You got 2 healers and 1 tank, do it. It doesn't matter, because in Vanguard it was always about 5, 6, maybe even as low as 4 people that were willing to work together could just go through with whatever comp. And that was like my first experience into seeing the game in a group setting. It was just like, take the people that you have with you and you will make it work based on the tools in your toolkit for your players.
Serious, like, whoa, DPS is the whole. Yes. In a setting where it matters, yes. In an LFR, I don't think it mattered as much. Where it I can guarantee you just from experience being a tank, like, guess what? DPS just wants to finish it. Like, regardless, the people in there just want to finish it. So if you're a tank trying to explain something to someone else, I got kicked out. I'd be proof that we were on the final boss. They didn't care. They kicked me out, and I was trying to stand up for somebody. And we got through the content. We didn't wipe. We never wiped. We didn't wipe once. We got through all that content. And
do you think EverQuest Next can make it so that you never see the same raid instance, the same version of the raid instance twice? Do you think they'll be able to change it up every time?
I mean, if it's instance, no. If it's instance, no. If it's outside the world, yes, because they can. Instance, no.
Yeah,
if it's there for story purposes. But, Diggs has been making the point that, the large group content is going to be like the outside world stuff, not the instant stuff. But I mean, we've heard Dave say, like, hey, listen, we plan to have some instance content. We do, like he said it, I think, early Landmark Live, when they weren't, like, kind of like a mix, when it was like still a mix between EverQuest Next / Landmark Live, it's a roundtable. Excuse me, it was during a roundtable, like very early roundtable, where it was kind of like, we kind of want to mix, where we have like this, because a lot of people said, no, we don't want instance content. We want to kind of like have the open dungeons and stuff of old days. And, and I trust me, I can Google and YouTube of early day EverQuest Next, and you needing 3 guilds grouping up together to take down a raid boss. Maybe that's what they're aiming for. Maybe they're aiming for guilds to work together. Like, that
would be epic.
That would be something I would get behind. I'd be like, listen, how many people we need for this? We need 120 people to take this down. All right, we better work with some guilds, because we sure as hell don't have those numbers.
Yeah, I think that I can foresee that EverQuest Next is going to be a little bit like the Rift, where they have the raid rifts that open in the world. But in EverQuest Next, it's going to be these events that happen, these rallying calls that are occurring in the world, that like large guilds are going to have to come and organize themselves to challenge that type of open world content. But at the same time, like, they're going to have that tool in the toolbox. It depends. Like, that is the part that I don't really know how much they're going to pull into it, but they're still, like, that's what we, like, at the beginning of the show, we were talking about, like, well, does it have to be instance to be a raid?
No.
Gladys?
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
All right, chat, we want to hear it from you. Just that simple question. Does it have to be instance to be a raid? Because I'm curious about that.
And the delay begins.
Yeah, well, I could say like Kelverall kind of touched on it before we even asked the question. He's like, "What are you going to do on PvP or open PvP servers where it's like if there is open world stuff like that, and you know, you're gonna get things will get nerfed." He's kind of right.
See,
what do you do when you?
I love that sort of organic evolution of a server where, like, if there is like, I'd hate to say like an orc because orcs aren't a playable race, but let's say, I don't know, there is a faction in the world that several guilds attach themselves to, and they're on one side of the issue, and then another, several guilds organize with this other in-game faction group, and they're on the other side of an issue, and the two sides clash over the issue, where you're actually having that sort of large epic PvP battles over a raid encounter to determine the fate of the universe. Come on, that's what I would stay up until I had to go to work.
I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably stay up. I start seeing light peek through my window, be like, oh no. They're like, I call it sick. I'd be like, I can't come in today. If it's still going on, I may call it. It's like, listen, I got a cold. yeah, then go to bed at like 12 o'clock. We're like, we did it, guys. Crash and like wake up at like 6 and be like, you want to do it again? No.
But I would love to see that sort of thing. It just depends on whether they want that sort of, like, because, and we've talked about PvP a little bit before, and I've said that because the idea of your personal player character dying at the hands of another player, because that's such a personal experience to some people, that you might want to kind of trim that down. I don't know if they want to make it open warfare.
True. Question is, where do you put those people? Let's see. I agree, Talon. So fun, but not many people in the EQ community seem to like PvP.
I gotta.
If we're talking about that bunk is junk landmark PvP, then yeah, nobody likes it.
The people that I talk to online about EverQuest Next, I think we're all on the same boat. Like, this is what we want, so we'll be rolling strong.
And there are, like, I could say it and people can come at me and be like, well, it's a work in progress. Listen, there are tons of other people that feel that way. Tons.
The landmark PvP is crap.
Well,
I mean,
it's limited, is what it is.
Oh, it's just straight crap.
It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things.
Well, we haven't seen enough of it for me to make the call.
I've seen enough of it for me to make the call.
I don't know. It worries me. Like, I know this is a raid episode, but I just pointed out. But it does worry me as we head to open. I think we'll save that for another show. Hopefully, a show that Cody and Tobin come back on. If you didn't know, this is really episode 40. Last episode never happened.
Yeah.
There was a last episode.
Yeah, there was. Well, it was only lost to the people that weren't here. This one's not lost. I'm not worried about it. Let's see. Oh wait, we had a question. Maybe I can answer that quick. I believe Legendary asked this. How do you want to see AI engagement with players? Should aggro be based on detection radius or be attacked? Should it be based on the line of sight? Should they already be on alert if you are in their territory? How about both types of group versus solo interactions between AI and player? Oh, that's 2 questions. All right.
That's a whole mouthful.
That is a lot. All right, let me go with the first one. How do you want to see AI engagement with players? Should aggro be based on direction radius or being attacked? Should it be based on line of sight, or should they already be on alert if you are in their territory? Well, I can answer that. I mean, the territory thing would be okay. I would be kind of cool if they can do it per creature. Like, if a creature can smell me, like if it's got like, let's say a wolf would have a higher ability to smell, right? And they can, based on their story bricks, they could say, well, it's got a heightened sense of smell. So it could smell me further away than, let's say, like someone, like let's say a dark elf wouldn't be able to sense me or smell me, right? Maybe a ranger could track me if I was in their area and they were trying to, like, they could track if they were a ranger. But let's say if it was just like a dude, like some dude protecting his grains or whatever, and I'm on his land, he wouldn't be able to notice me if I was like a rogue and I was in shadow form, like sneaking around, or if I was ducked down or hide. It was dark, like I could sneak out in the woods when it was dark. But a wolf or something with better like night vision would be like, "I'm on you, dude. I got you." I would like
see you.
I think how in a large group encounter rating, right? How I think that the real question that SOE has to figure out if it works, and if it works well in a fun, engaging manner, is like not getting rid of the Holy Trinity, but like with taunts and aggro and that sort of thing, like based on an intelligence in the mob. Who do they pick to attack? Who do they go after? What do they do? Because I think that we've talked about it before, that like a tank is going to be more about controlling, like so that this mob boss or these mob creatures can't get over to here where all of our damage dealers are at, because I have restricted, as the tank, their access to those players and that sort of thing. So I'm basically funneling the damage my direction through control, not through like a mechanic where I taunt you and you attack me, and then I build aggro and you attack the person with the highest aggro all the time, always.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree. Like, from what little we saw from the little tech demo, it kind of looked like the tank would need to stand in front. Like it would just veer off and be like, "I'm gonna go attack this." Like, you can taunt me all you want, I'm still gonna go hit that mage. So it's kind of like my duty to like jump in there and smack it beside the head, or jump in front of the mage real quick and take that damage, so the mage doesn't get it.
Or even like another mage tank, right? So you have a damage dealing mage over there and a mage tank over here who throws up a wall, an earth wall over there, because he is controlling where that boss can move around to.
Yeah, that's, and I think that's where I think that if they don't script, we're not scripting the bosses in this game, regardless if it's instance or open world, is going to make for some interesting large group content. And having to be able, because you can't, it's not like at 50% we have to like, he's going to change the second phase and he's going to start shooting rays of fire at us.
No, isn't so, that is the in every superhero movie / comic, and then raid encounter is always the same thing. It's like, okay, after you've hurt them enough, after you've nearly killed them off, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I have this other secret ability that I've kept in my back pocket. Like, why? Shouldn't you be like, oh, hey, smack them around with this first? Okay, puny guys, get out of here. Like, why wait until the end to use that? Shouldn't you use that right off the bat?
Yeah.
So, in regards to AI detecting players and how that should happen, let me just say that in an instance group, or say in a cavern, you have 20 freaking people walking around in armor and weapons and heavy boots.
Ka-clink, ka-clink, ka-clink.
I'm pretty sure it hears you a mile away. I don't think you have to see it. I don't think it has to see you. I don't think it has to smell you, and I don't think you have to do anything to piss it off. But hark. The adventurers come. Can you hear them?
Yeah.
Their metal and their armor and their weapons. They have hit the entrance. We shall.
That's the other thing. It's like, oh, hey, they're busting down the door. Let's all stand right here and wait for them to pull us one at a time instead.
You got that one boss, raid boss. Wait, hold on. Do my hair really quick.
Old school 40-man molten core is like.
But yeah, I think that's one of the issues that EverQuest Next could really turn the industry on its head a little bit, is if they can make their encounters be a little bit less, so encounter-ish. Like, here's phase, this boss at this phase at this time, and all that sort of stuff. Give it a little bit of realism, like the living, breathing world. All right, so 2 minutes before we go to break, final thoughts. We're coming right back in with this topic.
I
Get him out. Get it out.
I thought we were only doing hour shows now. I was gonna wait till the break. It's okay. We'll go for a break and we'll come back for another hour.
I didn't say another hour.
Or whatever.
We'll go as long as we can go.
Yep.
That's what she said.
Yeah, giggity. Well, my final thought is this. Based on the first half, I think that that MMOs need to start looking at making things more accessible. WoW is already starting. They are trying to change their technology based off their old stuff to new stuff. SOE has the ground floor to try to make it new, and that could work, and it should work for them if they are smart about it, but they have to play their cards right, because they are doing, even though they're trying to make the new iteration of MMO, that could fail for them. Because as we all know, MMOs are a tricky business, and it can make or break your business, so. Yeah. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to introduce the next video when you were done.
I am done. Is this the first one, or is like?
It's
How long is our break again?
it's about 8 minutes.
Awesome.
So when we came in and the introduction to the raiding topic, we showed one of the probably the most famous Warcraft raiding video, Leroy Jenkins, right? Then the next video that we're going to show is probably the second most famous, dubbed the More Dots video. And this is probably what turns people off and makes people afraid of raiding. And after we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about my personal feelings on how, like, people shouldn't be afraid, and they should look at that and be like, if you're ever in that sort of encounter again, you should just leave. Don't put up with it, because there are better players that will help you get through it. So with that, who wants to camp us out to the break?
Camping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.